Welcome to Say More from Boston Globe Opinion. I'm Jim Dao, editorial page editor. It's been 2 years since the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza shook our foundations. The epicenter of the fighting was more than 5,000 miles away, but here in Boston, college campuses became their own battlefield.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! If we don't get it! Shut it down! If we don't get it! Shut it down!
With everything going on in American politics, somehow this became the fight students wanted to wage with their administrators and elders and even each other. Working on the Harvard campus, Israeli journalist Romy Neumark watched in real time and struggled to understand what was going on. This struggle resulted in a podcast called My Home Fronts about the tensions within Jewish American families. Welcome, Romy.
Hi, Jim. Thank you for inviting me here.
Tell me about how your podcast, My Home Fronts, came to be.
Being here on October 7th, 2 years ago, was one of the most fundamental moments in my life as well, although I was not in Israel like my friends and family who are still heavily traumatized from that day, because I really didn't understand what's happening around me in so many levels. I was shocked. It was a great surprise. It took, I think, almost 24 hours to understand what actually happened. And then suddenly, although I was from the side that was attacked, I felt attacked. And I didn't understand why at that moment. And it was subtle. I mean, it's not that people called me and there was no yelling outside my door or something like that, but I was expecting to more of, I don't know, warmth, acceptance, some community feeling, and it wasn't there.
Feelings of sympathy about what had happened in Israel, in other words.
Yep. There was something cold while I was definitely in shock. And I think it led me to this journey that you can hear now at the podcast, My Home Fronts, because I felt that there are a lot of blind spots. Because the people that were not sympathizing me, close friends even, are great people. And our friendship is real. But there were things we were not talking about. And October 7th made us talk about it. But it took time. One of the reasons I chose the name My Home Fronts, for a lot of Israelis in the United States, it felt it might be another front here. Friends and family were literally calling me from the bomb shelters because the war has already begun, asking if I'm safe. So for me, being here in that moment, I understood there's a huge gap. I have many blind spots. I do not understand what's happening around me. And I think this has enlightened my curiosity, as I said, that led to this podcast.
Well, take us then to the next step where you met this Harvard student, Violet Barron. How did you find her? How did you meet her? And what was it about her that intrigued you and made you think that this is the person I want to get to know to tell this story of tensions in American Jewish families?
So we do have Violet speaks and introduce herself in the podcast. So why won't we listen to it and then I'll tell you.
I'm Violet Barron. I'm a sophomore at Harvard College. I'm 19. I'm studying social studies, which sounds a little bit silly, but it's kind of like an interdisciplinary field and generally like social and political theory. I tend towards liking childish things, so I like bubblegum ice cream, I like trampolines. I am Jewish, but I think I've always had a complicated relationship with my Judaism. My mom isn't Jewish, and my dad is not so religious. I think the reason why they put me in Hebrew school in the first place is my dad said to please my grandparents. So I think the Judaism there kind of like skipped a generation. But I also have a complicated relationship with Israel. I've been there twice. I had my bat mitzvah at the Western Wall. I have family friends there. I have a lot of love for the people there. The food is fantastic. But I've come to realize that it is a place that's far from perfect. And I've met a lot of people on the other side of things. I didn't even know a Palestinian person before coming to college. Yeah, I guess that's me.
And when I saw her for the first time, it was in our art installation event for Jewish students that all the Jewish students on campus, on Harvard campus, were invited to. And they made like a big piece together. Even my son came with me and we did it together. And I heard her introducing herself from the other side of the room. So I heard this very kind, sweet voice. And when she left the room, I noticed she's wearing a kafia, the Palestinian scarf. And then I think my journalistic senses were lightening up. And I'm like, okay, what's the story of that girl? I want to hear more.
So it's also worth mentioning about Violet that she wasn't just by happenstance wearing a keffiyeh that day, but she's a leader of the student group Harvard Jews for Palestine, and a very vocal and visible leader of that group. At the same time, she comes from this family where her grandparents were very actively involved in supporting Israel and encouraging cultural and student exchanges with Israel. The very kinds of things Violet is now sort of trying to stop.
So I had a crazy realization that weekend that I was at their house, that I was kind of like, is the work that I'm doing now all just kind of an undoing of the work that my grandma was and grandparents were doing?
One of the fascinating things about your podcast is you give her a microphone and ask her to go back to LA and record conversations with her family, in particular her grandmother. So tell us a little bit about those conversations and what you took away from them.
She said to me a few times that the things that we are talking about in this podcast are unspoken in her house, that around the dinner table, no one speak about it. And it's because both sides are afraid that it will turn into chaos. Now we're talking about someone who've been interviewing all over the world, basically, about what she thinks. She's yelling it everywhere on campus. And the image of her silence in her own home was something I really wanted to understand and explore further. And this was the reason that I gave her my microphone, because I knew, and she was really excited. I knew that there is something that, as a journalist, if I would hold this microphone, it won't be the same. And if her family would agree to be part of this project, we'll be able to hear something that, although I know it's a subject that is being, spoken around the world, we've never heard how it sounds like inside the home.
Was there one exchange in particular that really stood out for you?
There are a few. When Violet speaks with her father, it sounds like a history course they are doing to each other. And then in the end, they are talking about their relationship after they finish their monologues. And then they close the mic. And then Violet tells me that he asked her if she is a Hamas supporter. And she tells me the story afterwards, and she says, it's not a yes or no question. And then there's a week of silence, another week of silence between them. I think that a lot of those encounters are familiar to a lot of the listeners to the podcast, and maybe to your podcast as well, that comes from Jewish families. But on the other hand, when Violet speaks with her grandmother, they both discover that the activist DNA runs in both of them. And Violet's grandmother was also activist in the Jewish organizations and the Israeli support that she gave through her life. She was also donating to Arab and Palestinians villages inside Israel.
Oh, interesting.
And they speak about that as well. And Violet ends this conversation saying, well, apparently we think alike about a lot of the things. But there is one moment in their conversation where things are getting clearer.
agree with much of what you're saying, and I can't say I disagree, but I think differently than you do.
That's fair. And that makes sense. Why do you think we think differently?
Because we were born and had different experiences, born at different times, and have had different experiences.
What experiences do you think are different for us?
Well, I think that my involvement has been on the Jewish side and the good that it can do. And I think yours has been on the Arab side and the good it can do. But you, I think, by doing what you're doing, you are also lifting a finger and saying that the Jews are bad.
Not that Jews are bad,
That
but
the organism, well, whatever.
sure, that Israel is bad.
That Israel is bad.
Sure.
And I don't think Israel is bad. I think that the government right now is bad.
I think a lot of people feel so strongly about Israel because they feel like it's the only place in the world that Jews can be safe.
Be safe?
Yeah. Have you heard that?
I've heard it, but I don't believe it
Why not?
because I feel very safe here.
Yeah. So why?
And I don't think that Israel is going to make me safer.
Yeah.
I think that when we are talking about family relationships and so on, we would love to have those kind of moments when we just speak to each other and listen to each other and discover things and understand things about each other. And I think this is what was missing when I came as like almost an alien from Israel to this American society, Jewish American community. And I understood that people are afraid to speak and are afraid from those moments that are complicated and difficult, but also magical. And the generational rift that so many people have written about and feel it is something that I don't know if maybe the word healing is too strong, but it can be treated somehow by insisting on this kind of dialogue where you can actually learn from each other.
How have your Israeli friends and colleagues responded to Violet? How do they see her?
I want to be honest, it took me a while and I'm still slowly sharing this podcast to Israeli or Hebrew-speaking audience because I was afraid of this reaction. I was hearing those voices of, are you actually giving a stage to a Hamas supporter? What's wrong with you? You know? And in a way, this was the main feedback I got from friends. Like, why do we need to listen to her? She doesn't know anything about anything. She do not understand the complexity. She basically says in the podcast that she doesn't think that Israel has the right to exist. I have a friend who is an Holocaust scholar, and she compared what Violet has to say to the worst anti-Semitic speakers. So, yeah.
Strong feelings.
Very strong feelings. There are more conservative Jews, I would say, or more Israel supporters that I told them about Violet, and they said things like, if she was my granddaughter, I would never speak to her, or, like very... And my thought, and it's kind of gave me the one of the reasoning or focusing on her is maybe you have a granddaughter who thinks so, and she knows that she cannot speak with you, but doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to this voice. So I hope that people would listen to this podcast and expand their ability to listen to other voices that might be closer than what they think.
Did you come away thinking that she was indeed a Hamas supporter?
If to quote Violet, when her father dared to ask her, and she tells me about that in the first episode, unfortunately it's not on tape, her answer is, it's not a yes or no question. I hope that this podcast give Violet an opportunity to explain the nuances in her answer. I don't think she supports the atrocities. I do think she supports the right of Palestinians to have their own state, free life, and so on. And she put it in the context of many years of occupation. And she's criticizing the Israeli army or the military and less so the Israeli people. When I bring her voice, I don't want that the Israeli audience would be triggered by that, but I would love them to have more of an outside look of their own country, and I hope that it will help them make better decisions in the future.
More of my conversation with Romy Neumark after a short break. For a long while, the Israeli press was not covering in great detail what was happening in Gaza. I take it it's improved, that there's more coverage, or there had been more coverage more recently. Did you feel like you had to look to other press outside of Israel to really understand what was going on? And in some ways, did you feel that perhaps you were getting better information from the international press than Israelis were getting from the Israeli press?
100%. The Israeli media did not show for many, many months, and still is not showing the reality on the ground in Gaza for the Israeli audience. I think it's rooted in the Israeli trauma. I think that many of the reporters who actually reported on October 7th are post-traumatic, and they are projecting it on their editorial decisions. I think there is something in the structure of the Israeli media, again, that is somehow united with the Israeli ethos. You could see on the screen, on the right side of the screen, an Israeli flag during the war, and the words printed there was, "Together we will win." And I think that every American viewer can resonate with it when you think about how the American media covered 9/11 and what happened afterwards. For me, it's kind of a riddle that I'm trying to figure out. Many things have happened in Israel in the last 3 years that I'm in the United States. It was the election, it was the judicial overhaul, it's of course, October 7th and the war. And in many ways, I feel like I haven't downloaded the latest version of what does it mean to be an Israeli. The fact that I was here abroad and saw better coverage of what's happening in Gaza through the international media, and also was not hiding in bomb shelters for months. The fact that my son is protected here made me, it's hard to say broader my horizon, but definitely gave me a possibility to have to zoom out a bit from the experience of being Israeli under attack. And for many of the Israelis, this is the feeling that they are being under attack and they are alone in the world. And it connects to a lot of the narratives of what is anti-Semitism and how all the world is against us and we should protect ourselves. And it leads to other behaviors or decision-making of being more aggressive. Being here helps me ask questions that sometimes my colleagues are not asking about the future of this land, about what we are teaching our children. And in a state of war that we all hope that actually ended, I have understanding to the lack of ability to do that. I hope that I will feel less lonely now and more of my friends and colleagues will see what we all saw from outside of Israel about what's happening in Israel, and maybe we'll be able to change the future together.
How, if at all, have your own feelings about Israel changed in the last 2 years, 3 years?
It's a good and legit question. I used to work for the Israeli public broadcaster, which is more of like a BBC. And when you work for your country, in a way, I think you become this kind of representative. Because even when I'm saying the words, I'm not representing Israel, I feel more Israeli than ever. Maybe this is what it means to be Israeli. Like you're belonging to this people, to this land. It's not given. Like you need to hold it all the time. The sense of feeling that if you would criticize your own country in the hard time that it's going through now, you would be almost like a traitor. It's something that is really inside the soul of every Israeli. And I ask myself, and I'm trying to do this in this podcast and in our podcast where we speak right now, where is our moral and values when we are so used to hold this, to be a representative of Israel, which is perfect and the right and always right and so on.
Do you feel you're put in that position a lot to be sort of the representative of Israel, the person who has to explain Israel or to be an ambassador for Israel to Americans?
I don't know. I wonder what the listeners to your podcast would listen, but I feel like you're putting me in this position. Maybe you're not. Maybe it's only in my head. But there is something like that as an Israeli. Like if you would criticize it too much, you are also against your own home. And it's not something of the last 3 years, I believe. It's like inherited. But there was a very, very difficult time, and there's a need of a big change. And we need a lot of hope to believe it's possible to change the trajectory of where this country is going to. And I think this is another phase of my journalism, that I do see journalism as a way of like in the journalist toolkit that can lead a social change and can bring new language, bring new perspectives, and so on. So it's a very complicated, nuanced way to say I have a lot of criticism, and I hope that on this bridge of working with American media and American Jewish community and bringing my Israeli knowledge will enable some kind of movement that will bring us better future through journalism.
Romy Neumark is a fellow at the Center for Jewish Studies at Harvard and a visiting scholar at Brandeis. Her new podcast is called My Home Fronts. We'll link to it in our show notes. So great to speak with you, Romy.
Thank you for having me, Jim.
Say More is a production of the Boston Globe. Today's episode was produced by Anna Kusmer. Our engineer is Uzair Ahmed. If you like the show, please follow us and leave us a review. You can email us at saymore@globe.com. I'm Jim Dao. Thanks for listening.